All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football, go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe to Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Man, there's been a lot of distractions with the big game looming large with Auburn and Texas A&M. Auburn comes into this game as an outside looking in team in the top 25, facing the perceived number 5 team in the nation. Now, listen, Texas A&M, I think, is a decent football team. But if all teams given, Pac-12, all other schools that are not able to participate to the fullest extent, I just don't think Texas A&M would be the number 5 team in the nation, especially when you have a situation where when you look at the top 25 in the country, it looks like the top 25 of men's basketball. You got Western Carolina in there. You got Liberty. You got all these teams in the top 25 that kind of inflate Texas A&M's value. We're going to talk about that a little later. But Auburn has actually had a really rough week. One, losing to your rival 42-13 in a game that it seems like Auburn was ill prepared, and even once things got going, missed a lot of opportunities in that particular football game. And of course, this is another car video that I'm doing. I'm actually liking the live streams on YouTube. I really like talking to you guys. But either way, Auburn, it's just been a rough week. Losing to your rival 42-13, losing your second highest rated commit in Armani Goodwin, and now having Matthew Hill, who was one of the top recruits of the 2018 class, decides to hit the transfer portal. So when you look at social media, man, social media is absolutely blasting the Auburn program, blasting Gus Malzahn, and this actually gives there's a certain genre, a certain subculture of Auburn fans that absolutely hate Gus Malzahn. So this is fuel. I mean, absolute fuel to their fire. Losing to your rival, you haven't beaten your rival away since you've been a coach. Then you lose one of the top commits of your 2021 recruiting class, which is a class that right now perceives to already be shaky, dropping you all the way down to the 39 ranked recruiting class in the country. Man, it just hasn't been a bad week. But Gus Malzahn did say, hey, look, we got some good things coming down the horizon, and we will wait to see. It kind of reminds most of the Gus-hating Auburn fans of his speeches after the game, where he says, "Hey, we dropped the ball, we did this, that, and the other, and now we're going to get things right." Blah blah blah. The Auburn fan base absolutely doesn't want to hear that. But here's the thing: Gus Malzahn has to remember, especially with this Auburn fan base that is so on edge. The success of Alabama is really putting him on the chopping block on a week-in to week-out basis. Not being able to even come close to beating Alabama this week really puts him at an adverse position. So here's the thing. Matthew Hill, a 4-star commit out of the 2018 recruiting class from Brookwood High School in Gwinnett County, Georgia. That's a place where Auburn tends to get a lot of their high-level recruits. It just hasn't worked out. Now, do I think, Matthew Hill should have seen the field more? Yeah, maybe so. But I'm not a coach. And the thing that kills me about this whole sunshine pumping thing, I don't sunshine pump shit. My thing is, I'm not a coach. I'm not an athletic director. I'm not a booster. I do contribute to the program via the Alumni Association of Auburn, being a graduate from Auburn. But at the same time, I'm not there every day. I don't assess the talents of the kids. I don't assess the reasoning as to why they put certain players on the field and certain players not on the field. But what I can speculate is maybe he just wasn't a fit. Maybe he sees with the future of what Auburn has going on. They got Xavion Capers. They have Kobe Hudson, who's been seeing some playing time. Shedrick Jackson, in my opinion, just really, I don't know. That's kind of a dark horse in this thing. He gets out there and misses passes, all those things. But I think the Auburn fan base is so Alabama hypnotized that a lot of times that when Auburn starts to see any surmountable level of not having success on the football field or in the recruiting trail, they spell it as gloom and doom. Because if you look at social media, there are several Auburn groups on Facebook that as soon as something somewhat negative happens to Auburn, blame Gus. And I get it. I'm not in disagreement with any of that stuff. But at the same time, let's be real about this. Gus Malzahn is in a position to where he coaches one of the toughest portions of SEC football. He has to face LSU, Georgia, and Alabama every year. Then you top that off with always seeming to have a neutral site game against a team that could possibly make a run for their own conference. The wins can be somewhat hard to come by. And for all you negative naysayers, you say, oh, you're making excuses for Gus. No, I'm absolutely not making excuses for Gus. Because at this point in his career, it should be a point to where he is starting to solidify himself as a successful coach in the SEC. Has he done it? Kind of and kind of not. This particular year, Auburn has... You take away the South Carolina loss, and I think we really don't have this harsh of a conversation. Because when you look on social media, people are like, man, that South Carolina loss, absolutely terrible. They wind up firing their coach, things of that nature. That is the glaring loss in this situation that really has the Auburn fan base kind of on edge as to whether Gus Malzahn is the guy moving forward. I'm not here to argue whether Gus Malzahn is the best coach for the Auburn program, because that's not my place. Because one, like I said before, not a decision maker. I don't see what they see. I don't see what the goals and what the objectives are in moving the program. But what I do see is a situation. Auburn faces the number 5 team in the country. They beat Texas A&M. Okay. Then they turn around and beat Mississippi. If they turn around and beat Mississippi State, you talk about a situation where they win about 5 of their last 6 ball games in SEC play. Finished the season 7-3. We thought at the beginning of the season that they would finish 8-2. Back to the Matthew Hill situation. Is it possible that Matthew Hill should have been a much better contributor to the Auburn Tigers cause? Yeah, I think so. I think he's a very good athlete. I think he's a very formidable athlete. But it seems like the favoritism is starting to come with the recruits that they have now, with the Kobe Hudsons and with the Xavion Capers of the world. And with, you still have Eli Stove there. Some folks are talking, well, maybe Cody Burns as a wide receiver coach is not the right man for the job. All of this stuff is fluff and is noise. Auburn fans, Auburn fan base in general, they want wins, and they want wins against their rival teams on the road, especially against Alabama. Hadn't won at Tuscaloosa, hadn't won at Baton Rouge, hadn't won in Athens. That is the glaring stat. Also, you top that off with the 2017 run, which probably was the most gratifying yet dissatisfying run. You beat Alabama and Georgia, mind you, at home. 2 of the number 2 teams in the two of the top teams in the country, which led to this $49 million contract extension that still is a distaste for the Auburn fan base. But what Auburn fans have to realize is, look, you weren't in the boardroom to make that decision. It's not Gus Malzahn's fault necessarily that he got that extension. If you were the coach, no matter what the circumstance was, would you take? So what was Gus Malzahn supposed to do? Just not take the $49 million raise and the contract extension? This is all business. It was bad business. I think it was a bad decision. Because when you look at it, yeah, they beat Georgia like a drum. They beat Alabama like a drum. But at the same time, 2 games should not dictate, You giving that type of contract extension. But you can't blame Gus Malzahn for that. And that's just being real. That's not being a sunshine pumper for Gus Malzahn. Excuse me. That's just being real. But either way, it's been a rough week. Auburn has the opportunity to win out. I think these are two very beatable teams that Auburn will play within the next couple of weeks. Okay, Auburn beats Texas A&M. Beat them by more than 2 scores. Fans will still revert back to, well, you lost to South Carolina, to a team that, their coach was fired. Will Muschamp was going to get fired anyway. He has not done anything to take that program to the level that they had with Steve Spurrier. He just hasn't done it. He's not that kind of coach. He is the ultimate assistant coach. He wasn't successful at Florida. Probably one of the more simple places to recruit because of facilities, because of the Nike brand, things of that nature, and he still wasn't successful there. What the hell made you think he was going to be successful at South Carolina? And looking back at that game against Auburn, Bo Nix threw 3 interceptions, and Auburn still, late in the game, had an opportunity to tie that game up. Would have had to make the 2-point conversion to win that game. That just told you where South Carolina was as a football team. So, yeah, it's definitely been a rough week. I'm looking at social media. These guys are talking about, well, you're getting complacent, because I'm not getting complacent off of shit. I'm not getting complacent off of anything, because complacency or non-complacency is not going to change the trajectory of what the administration at Auburn thinks is the right man for the job. I'm not saying that Gus Malzahn is the wrong man for the job or the right man for the job. I do get the Auburn fan sentiment in the fact that, you know what? You dropped the ball when it mattered most. The 2013 national championship game against Florida State, you within minutes of winning that game, you lost that game. You lost to LSU after having double-digit leads at home and away. You lost to Georgia in 2016 when you were clearly the more talented team, lays an egg in the second half, a pick 6 for a touchdown. You lose to Georgia 13-7. Yep, that is absolutely unacceptable. Now you're at a point where in 2018, you look at the 2018 recruiting class, the top 4 guys of that recruiting class have hit the transfer portal. Cornish Miller, Harold Joyner, Matthew Hill. That doesn't look good. At the same time, but you got to look at what's possibly ahead for Auburn. What if they win these last 2 games? 7 SEC wins. You lose 3. You lose the 2 that you're probably going to lose to anyway. And here we are. Rough week. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to be honest. Rough week for the Auburn Tigers. 42-13 against Alabama. I don't think that game should have been that lopsided. I don't think Auburn, talent-wise, is that much more deficient than Alabama to where that game should not have been a little bit more competitive. But you got to face the reality. It is what it is. Alabama's blown everybody out. 50-6 in the last 3 games. Some of the best talent in the country. To top that off, from a perception standpoint, people are buying too much into this. Nick Saban coaches the game from home and beats Auburn 42-13. I think there's more stock put into that than it should be. Now, from a ridiculous standpoint, they're talking about, well, maybe Sarkisian should be the heir to the dynasty at Alabama because of what he did in the Iron Bowl. Man, I could have coached the Iron Bowl and probably beat Auburn by 14 points at least. And I suck at coaching, probably. I could probably coach the defense, but I think a lot of stock is placed in places that it shouldn't be. And people are not really looking at the big picture. Tennessee, absolute dumpster fire. Arkansas, they're being placed on a higher level than they should be. Auburn should have beat them by at least 10 points. It should not have come down to the Bo Nix spike backwards in that game. Ole Miss should not have come down to Sean Shivers. That whole thing with Sean Shivers, yeah, he might have touched the ball. Fastest guy in America, he would have recovered the ball. But at the same time, Auburn is in a position to where fans want more. And I get it. I get it. I even had a fan that said, look, so you telling me we should be satisfied with Auburn possibly going 7-3 with a loss to South Carolina? I'm not telling you to be satisfied with anything. I'm just asking you to look at reality. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast Talking Auburn Football. Go ahead and like the video, comment, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.